What's up, everybody? It's Dr. Diane, your Libido Doc, back here today talking about what to do if your partner wants sex more than you do. And so the first thing I will say here is I really like the idea, the concept of create more than compromise. Not saying that we're not going to compromise. Of course, in relationships, we always have some level of compromise. But the reason I like the word create is because compromise really kind of has this feeling of like giving something up, of like meeting in the middle, both parties give up something and they find a way they can live with it, right? So it has this connotation that frankly is just not very sexy. And when we think about like, compromising in our sex life, like doesn't sound as fun and as sexy and as erotic as creation. And so what I mean by this is sometimes when we have somebody that is saying they want sex more than the other person, what essentially is happening there is we have a situation where there's different reasons for that, right? So there might be somebody that maybe is wanting sex more, and maybe the reason is like they really like the orgasm, or it's a huge release, or it's stress reduction, or it might be something else, like they just feel more connected with their partner than ever before, and it just is providing a sense of partnership and getting rid of any loneliness, right? And so what we find sometimes is when we get behind the reason for wanting more sex, sometimes we find that our reasons around what we want and our value systems around it are closer than we think. So for example, so the partner that wants sex more might say that the reason behind it is they just want to feel closer to you. They just want to feel that level of touch. Maybe touch is their love language. They just really filled up, and it helps them so much with feeling closeness and love and touch and tenderness and all those things. And you might hear that and think like, wow, actually I love, closeness and love and touch and tenderness, right? So there can be a standpoint of really coming at this and saying, okay, well, what is this providing for the other person? And then when we actually understand what's behind the desire, that's where we get to create. And so what I really want to broaden this conversation when we're talking about sex, what I really want to broaden it to be is, when I'm saying sex, I don't just mean intercourse, right? And that's what sometimes we, partner might want is like, oh, maybe it's intercourse. But sometimes we find that, okay, what's driving that is a release. What's driving it is stress reduction. What's driving it is feeling close to their partner. What's driving it is feeling love, right? Sometimes what we can actually find is there's intimacy, and there's ways we can be intimate. There's ways we can touch and love and fondle and flirt and do all these other things that maybe are not intercourse that still provide some of these values. So sometimes, a creative solution might be like, okay, well, you're having sex, say once a week. And I realize some of you guys are not, but let's just say that for argument's sake, just to, kind of get a point across. So if you're having sex, once a week and your partner is like, well, I really want to experience this 3 times a week. You're like, wow, that just seems like a lot. Your sex drive's maybe not that high. Look at other things on this channel to help you with that. But when you have these types of conversations, one of the things that will oftentimes come up is, okay, well, maybe then, those other couple times a week, maybe there's other ways that you guys can play and intimately engage that will actually also provide value for you for feeling a sense of love and care and tenderness and stress reduction, could also satisfy the partner. And what we tend to find in arousal is sometimes when we are actually doing certain components of intimacy, the arousal comes later. So it's not like we get aroused and then we do the thing. Oftentimes we do the thing and get aroused. So if we take the pressure off and just say, hey, we can actually get everybody's needs met in these creative ways by maybe having a couple extra days a week where we go to bed early and we just, sensually massage each other and, and play with each other's bodies, play with each other's erotic tissue, but just basically get lost in the sensual touch without intercourse as that end agenda. And sometimes what we find is that this can really stir up that erotic world and really get people into the mood and in passion without having to compromise. So of course there can be a level of compromise, like I said, like sometimes that is a necessary component. But so many times I find that if we get to the underlying drivers and motivations of what having sex serves for an individual, why they want it more often, why they feel like they need it, if we can get to those underlying what it's providing for, and then seeing if there's a match value around like, oh, I actually want some of those same things. How can we then create where everybody winds up feeling like, oh, I am getting my needs met and I am having a lot of my preferences met. And maybe it doesn't look exactly like what we thought, but because we're creating together and co-creating instead of just compromising and be like, well, if you want it 3 times and I want it 1 time, I guess we're going to do it 2 times, right? So if we get rid of that sort of thinking, or at least put that sort of thinking as more last case scenario and really come at these conversations from creativity, we can sometimes find ways of engaging intimately that brings everybody closer together and makes everybody feel really solid. And if you're concerned about how to have these conversations, remember I have more stuff on this channel about that. But remember, you can also join me for my 21-day Libido Jumpstart. We're going to talk a lot about how to have these kind of conversations, how to really get your own libido charged up, how to ask for things that you want, your own understanding of your needs, preferences, wants, and desires, and so on and so forth. So information about how to sign up for that is in the show notes. The next cohort does start May 6th, so we're filling up. I do take a limited number of people, so make sure you check the information in the show notes out about that as well. All right, everybody, I will see you in another video.